Our text this morning comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, beginning with verse 40. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of a righteous person. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. The word of God for you, the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Amen. Please be seated. If you were toiling up a weary hill, bearing a load beyond your strength to carry, straining each nerve untiringly, and still stumbling and losing foot here and there, and each one passing by would do so much as give one upward lift and go his way, would not the slight reiterated touch of help and kindness lighten the day? There is so little and there is so much. We weigh and measure and define in vain. A look, a word, a light responsive touch can be the ministers of joy to pain. A person can die of hunger, walled in gold. Yet in a single crumb may quicken hope so strong in breath. And every day we give or we withhold some little thing that tells for life or death. That poet, I think, described the world in which you and I live. I think that poet described much of the lives you and I lead. Toiling up a weary hill, bearing a load beyond our strength to carry, stumbling and losing foot here and there. Her name was Sarah Ophelia Coley Cannon. What a name. And she was the youngest daughter of a lumber magnate in Tennessee who lost everything he had during the Depression. And that youngest daughter decided she wanted to be an entertainer. And she found herself in East Atlanta, and the group she was with wanted to go up in the Highland area, and she went up there and fell in love with a mountain woman and all of her expressions and all of her mannerisms. And then Ophelia was invited to go to Greenville, South Carolina to entertain a women's group. And she went into the group wearing a white hat with a price tag hanging off of it. And she said, "Howdy! I'm just so proud to be here. And I love you so much." Who was that?
Minnie Pearl.
Yeah, Minnie Pearl. All she had to do was say howdy. And she invited you in. And she became your friend. You know, howdy's short for how are you doing? And in the South, you know, we have a nature about condensing everything down. Howdy. It conveys friendship. It's a word of welcome. You know, at the very core of the Judeo-Christian faith is generosity, graciousness, and hospitality. Our Bibles say that we should be entertainers of the stranger. Jesus set the pattern in our text this morning when he said, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and the one who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." Think about that for just a second. When we welcome a stranger into our midst, we are actually welcoming the Son of God into our midst. Now, the Talmud, that body of Jewish civil and ceremonial law, says it another way. It reads, "Deeds of kindness are equal to the weight of all the commandments." I got to repeat that. Deeds of kindness are equal to the weight of all the commandments. Wow. I can't help but think how unlike that principle we've become. You know, in our postmodern world, we've gotten further and further away. We've hidden behind our computers, our cell phones, our iPads. We've turned our friends into Facebook contacts. And we pulled back. And I can't help but think about the Christian church. And I had to go back and read this again. It was something some theologians, credible theologians, said about the Christian church, that we have actually reverted back to infantilism. Ooh. And they just didn't talk about laity. They were talking about preachers too. Spoiled children? You know how spoiled children act, don't you? Self-centered, self-absorbed, spiteful, demanding their own way, fundamentally dishonest about themselves and fundamentally dishonest about those around them. In other words, according to these theologians, we no longer play well in the sandbox. We just don't get along, and we are acting more and more like children. As I said a few weeks ago, I think it's one of the reasons we have lost our relevance in the communities we find ourselves in today. To use a biblical word, we have lost our Christian witness. Now, what is our witness? Old word. We don't use it much anymore, do we? Christian witness. That means we show the nature of the risen Christ. You and I, by the way we live, by the way we conduct ourselves, should show the world who Jesus was. We're a witness for Jesus, in other words. We're pointing to him. So, rather than our lives attracting people to the gospel of Jesus Christ, according to these theologians, we're actually repelling people. In other words, if we can't get along in our sandbox, why would any other children want to get in our sandbox with us? Now, let me make a strong case that comes to us from another century. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born in India, and he was educated as an attorney in England. And he practiced law in his early days in both India and South Africa, and both were dominated by Great Britain. And during that time, he engaged a lot of Christians, and he was not impressed. He found them to be dishonest. He found them to be bigoted, unethical, immoral, and unethical. And when a missionary tried to convert him to Christianity, he was asked, "Why don't you like Christ?" And Gandhi said, "I love your Christ. I love your Christ. But you Christians are so much unlike your Christ." And after leading India to social, political, and economic independence from Great Britain, and just before his death at the hands of a Hindi religious zealot, he made a statement that is often misquoted We see it on bumper stickers, and people quote it on the internet about be the change you want to see in the world. Well, that's not what he said. That's a misquote. Here's what he really said. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies of the world would also change. As a man changes his behavior or his nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. We need not wait to see what others do. But then we can't change ourselves, can we? That's the misnomer in his quote. We can't change ourselves. We have to be transformed. And the only thing that really can transform the character of our lives or the nature of our souls is the Holy, the very Spirit of God. But then, that's what Jesus came to do. Jesus came to transform a fallen race of people, to change our very natures. Tom Rainer wrote something some years ago that I went back this week and looked up. He said this, talking about all churches, dynamic churches that are effective agents of transformation, take the time to know the needs and expectations of those who are spiritually distant and focus on what is important. The article was 15 ways to reach the unchurched. And I'm just going to share just a couple of these, and I'm not going to go into them in depth, just the headings. He said we have to start majoring on the majors and stop majoring on the minors. Stop whining about the length of service, the color of the walls, standing or not standing, clapping or not clapping, and the temperature during worship. Start focusing on being the church outside of the church walls. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but here's the topics he said. These are the positive sides of what he said. He said, be biblical. Make evangelism a top priority. In other words, go out in the community and say howdy. Enhance small group ministries. Check your facility for repair and ask if it's inviting the people. If it's user-friendly with its greeters on how to not show people where to go, but actually lead them to where they need to go. Keep friendliness an issue. Seek excellence. Know your purpose. Remember the power of prayer. And foster every member in the involvement of ministry in that church. I think he's right. I think he was right. But all that's well and good. And we should practice everything he lifted. But in our text this morning, we find the very genesis of it all. It is the greatest evangelistic tool we have at our disposal as the Christian church. A welcoming spirit, saturated in kindness, gentleness, compassion, and the offer of grace to broken souls. Several years ago, there was a practice that began, that I absolutely loved, and I stumbled on it. I was the benefactor of it before I even knew it existed. It was called RAC. You remember that? RAC? Anybody here remember RAC? Random Acts of Kindness? Random acts of kindness. The idea was to go through your day finding ways to randomly be kind to strangers. If done for no other reasons but to fulfill the admonition of Jesus to be welcoming. The legend goes like this. It began with Anne Henry when she wrote on her placemat in a restaurant, "Practice random acts of kindness and senseless beauty." And a fellow by the name of Will Glenn picked up on that. and accidentally launched a movement in 1993 when he sent invitations to 50 people who were going to come to a gathering, and he asked them to bring with them 50 stories of random acts of kindness that they had witnessed. And guess what? 200 showed up, and a movement began. And I stumbled onto it one day going through a drive-through, and I handed them my debit card, and they looked at me and said, "The car in front of you paid for your meal." Really? Yeah. RAC. And I said, "Okay, I'll pay for the car behind me." And so they took my debit card and put that one on it. And it went on and on. Cars that were in shops were paid for by people for repair work. You know, I remember back in Whitney at a little Mill Hill church, I had a little 1971 Pontiac Ventura. It was rust-colored because it was only rust. And I had Maypop tires. You know what those are? They may pop any minute. I had Maypop tires on this thing, and all of a sudden, my car disappeared. I thought somebody had stolen that rust bucket. And I started thinking, well, you know, serves them right. But later that afternoon, my car showed back up. It had 4 brand new tires on it. The tires were worth more than the car, but I had 4 brand new tires on that car. You know, people were seen all over the United States doing RAC. There was a teenager in Atlanta was seen scrubbing graffiti off park benches. An elderly man was seen running to his car and getting an umbrella and running back to the grocery store and opening it up and covering a mother and her little child to her car. On and on and on it goes, or it went. What would happen in our community if that sort of movement began as a spiritual movement? What would happen? What would happen to us if we, you and I, led that movement here at Myrtle Beach? You know, hospitality is all about developing and nurturing relationships, friendships. Jesus was schooled in the practice of hospitality. He knew what he was saying in this text. Hospitality, hak nasat orkim. Hak nasat orkim. Did I say that right? Okay. It's called mitzvah, which is law. In Hebrew, mitzvah is law. Hospitality was law to the Jews. Some rabbis thought that that literally meant the bringing in of the stranger, to be part of the gimulut. The gimulut, which is loving kindness and making them family. In other words, when you invite that stranger in your house, you don't sit them down and act like they're a stranger and you really don't want them there, and you begrudge everything they eat, or you look at their shoes, how dirty they are, and their lack of manners. No. You bring the stranger in, you welcome them at their seat, and you treat them like royalty. You treat them like a child of God. Also, the Talmud teaches that one's house should always be welcoming, should always be open to strangers. Whosoever is in need, let him come and eat, says the Talmud. At the Passover meal, there's a section in the Haggadah where all those who are hungry are invited to come and sit down and eat the Passover meal. It's an excellent adventure, this spreading of hospitality. It doesn't have to be earth-shaking. Just a smile, a touch on the shoulder, a card, a text, a phone call, maybe a short visit. Jesus says, did you catch it? Just a cup of cold water. Just a cup of cold water. So the question remains, how can we begin to imitate the graciousness of other disciples that have been touched by the hand of Jesus in hospitality? How do we carry on the hospitality further? How can we extend the hospitality of Christ to others? It takes time. It takes time. It takes a strong dose of grace. After all, you know, we're people that are used to telling people that that's my pew. You need to move somewhere else. That's my pew. That's where me and my family have sat for 50 years. So please move to another pew. Yeah. Hospitality. We're also, you know, those people who, when we have a dinner, we turn up our chairs at the table because we don't want a stranger sitting with us, you know, because we got our little clique and we want to stay together. We turn up our chairs. Hospitality. So we really have to think, don't we? We have to be intentional about hospitality, to be gracious to one another and to be gracious to the stranger in our midst. You know, people are starving for genuine relationships. Starving. You can't find a genuine relationship on Twitter or on Facebook. What's that other thing? Well, that's all he has, so we'll leave it at that. You don't find genuine relationships on those things. Snapchat.
He told me not to get on that.
Genuine relationships is personal sharing. It's contact. It's looking in each other's eyes. It's sharing each other's pain and joys. It's being so close that you can detect the bad breath, you know? It's knowing that that person has got your back. That they're going to be there with you regardless of the situation or circumstance. They're going to remain your friend. They may disagree with you, but they're going to be there for you. You know, as I look at, I've been reading about gangs, and we know we have gangs here in Myrtle Beach, in the outlying areas. You know what gangs give the person that causes them to join a gang? A relationship. The very thing we're talking about. Hospitality. Camaraderie. Loyalty. When church is at its best, that's what it is. We become a spiritual family. And family shares history. Family shares history. Family shares dreams. Family shares broken hearts and bruised souls. Family shares successes and failures. Families weep one minute and belly laugh the next. And families don't always agree with each other. But when you disagree, you don't leave your family, do you? If you did, raise your hand. No, you don't leave family because you have a disagreement. It's deeper than that. The renowned Albert Schweitzer was one of the most famous missionaries of the modern era. You know, he was a concert pianist and a concert organist, and he was a physician. He had held 2 doctorates, one in theology and the other one in physics. And he chunked all of that to go to Africa to be a missionary. And there's a story where all these dignitaries came to Africa to see this taking place, to see Albert Schweitzer, to see what he's all about. And they're walking along talking to him, and they're going up a hill, and they catch a woman over here, an elderly woman, carrying a bundle of sticks on her back, and she was broken over carrying the weight of that bundle. And he just stopped and left this group of dignitaries, and he went over and he just didn't stick his shoulder under the bundle. He took the bundle off her shoulders and put them on his shoulders. And he was almost 80 years old. Not quite as old as you, Tom, But he was almost 80 years old, and he put that bundle of sticks on his shoulders, and he walked up the hill carrying her load. And when he set it down at the top of the hill, the group caught him and says, "Why did you do that? Why did you do that?" And he said, "No one should ever have to bear a burden alone like that." And that's who we are as a church. No one out there should carry a burden alone because they should have us. No one in here should carry a burden like that alone because we have one another. Now let me close with this. On a Sunday in a small Mill Hill church, the choir had just finished singing. This was at Beaumont United Methodist Church, Beaumont, South Carolina. Choir had just finished singing. I stood up to read the text, and one of the choir members, a 19-year-old, came out of the choir loft and came around the altar. And I thought she had gotten sick or she had to leave, or, and everybody felt the same thing, and all eyes were on her. And she went to the fourth pew, and she sat down beside another girl about her age. And they started hugging and crying. Well, come to find out, the girl that she sat down beside and hugged and shared tears with that morning, her grandmother had died the day before, and that grandmother had reared her. So this girl was broken. And through that simple act, she showed her friend gracious hospitality and delivered the best sermon that day. There was nothing left for me to say. Such are the small acts of kindness. If you think your life has never touched another, if you doubt your words have ever soothed the soul, if you believe that your compassion has gone unnoticed, or your listening ear not valued as pure gold, if you ever doubt the power of caring gesture, know this: God is pleased with what you do, and for us, dear friends, we hope to return the favor of the kindness received so generously from you. Never underestimate the power of a cup of cold water. Hospitality toward one another is a sign that Christ is welcome in our midst. And where Christ is welcome, all things are possible. Even the swords that divide us can be sheathed with hospitality. Work towards peace, but be prepared for conflict, and keep a cup of cold water waiting by the door. Let us become that place in our community. Not where hospitality is random, but intentional, because that's just who we are. Let us welcome others as Christ has welcomed us. Let us begin with a welcoming. Howdy. Amen.
Thank you again so much for joining us this morning. If you'd like more information about our services, please visit our website, which is FUMCMB.org, or call our church office at 843-448-7164. Thank you.